This chamber in New York is being used to treat people with neurological disorders like autism with hyperbaric oxygen. They have many one-person chambers in the world today. The Dallas Cowboys have a hyperbaric chamber. Now question, why would the Dallas Cowboys want a hyperbaric chamber? Well, they've discovered their injured players will heal twice as fast. And if you're paying the guy $1,000 a minute to go play with the ball, you want him out there playing with the ball, not sitting on the sideline, right? I think the whole world probably had hyperbaric conditions before the flood came. You can get your own hyperbaric sleeping bag if you want. Michael Jackson has one. He says it's going to make them live forever. Well, that's just what we need, you know. Here's my son, Kenandu, back there on the camera, and his wife and I at an oxygen bar in Alaska. You go in to eat lunch and you pay $5 and you breathe pure oxygen while you're eating. After about 15 minutes of breathing pure oxygen, now it's not under pressure, but still, you're breathing pure oxygen. You walk away saying, wow, let's get back to work. Let's go shop some more, you know, which is probably the hidden agenda. A friend of mine in Oregon has his own hyperbaric chamber. It cost $250,000. He let me go in it for 6 times. They call it a dive. You sit in there, they close the door, and they pressurize it. I got up to triple atmospheric pressure. After about an hour in there, all your plasma is saturated with oxygen. I got out. I felt like running around the world. I couldn't believe it. Felt like I was 19 years old again. Like, man, let's go jog someplace. It's incredible, the energy level. Dr. Mori, Ki Mori, in Tokyo, Keio University in Tokyo, started raising a tomato plant under pressurized carbon dioxide, so I've heard, and filtered sunlight. He blocked out the UV light. His tomato plant grew a little faster than normal, and it kept growing and growing and growing, and they said, wow, this thing's getting bigger. After 2 years, it had produced 900 tomatoes and was 16 feet tall. They moved it to a shopping center, built scaffolding to hold up the branches, and it kept growing and growing. They took it to Expo 85 and said, this plant might produce 10,000 tomatoes. It ended up growing 40 feet tall, producing 15,000 tomatoes in its lifetime. One tomato plant. That's a tomato tree. Now, this was a cherry tomato plant. You know, the little cherry tomatoes you put on your salad. But his tomatoes were coming off baseball size. Can you imagine if the whole world had hyperbaric conditions like that before the flood came? The plants would grow like crazy. You would need the dinosaurs just to mow the grass. There's a guy in Iowa got curious, you know, why do the birds start chirping an hour before sunrise? He found out the chirping of the birds is a frequency that helps open up the plant cell stomata on the bottom of the leaf, and it lets the plant start breathing in the morning. It helps, that's the alarm clock, it wakes the plant up. He found out that that frequency is found in music, classical music, quite a bit. So he started playing classical music to his cornfield. His neighbors thought, you know, un poquito loco a la cabeza, you know. He's a couple fries short of a Happy Meal, but until his corn grew 15 feet tall. And he said, what channel was that you're playing? When he played the music to his squash plants, they produced 5 squash per leaf instead of 1. He played it to his black walnut tree, and it grew twice as fast as normal. Called sonic bloom. It's a combination of vitamins for the plant and special frequencies to open up the stomata. I debated Jeannie Scott. She's the president of the National Center for Science Education. The National Center, big name. They got 4 or 5 people there, a little bitty storefront building, you know, but they're the National Center in Berkeley, California. She said in the debate, by the way, there's the National Center right there, little storefront building, that's it. Which is okay, but it gets kind of much bigger title than I think they ought to have. Andrew Carnegie started this whole organization purposely to keep evolution in the schools and keep creation out. That's the purpose of the National Center. Well, I debated Jeannie Scott, and she said in the debate, she said, Dr. Hovind, there are 80 separate layers of coal in the Midwest. She's right. She said, if you look at the amount of coal in the world, the entire biomass, that means all the plants of the world today, could not possibly be converted to that much fossil fuel. She's right. In other words, there's so much coal in the ground, if you took every tree and bush and blade of grass on the surface of the earth, you couldn't squish it and make all that coal. I said, Jeannie, you were right. She said, don't you see, there had to have been an enormous amount of time involved in laying down the coal seams. Oh, now right there she's wrong. You see, she's looking at today's world, which is 70% underwater, and thinking that's how the coal got there. Well, if the pre-flood world was mostly land and loads of plants, the flood would form all that coal in 1 year. But she's guilty of looking at today's world and trying to interpret the past, just like 2 Peter warned us was going to happen. In Montana and Wyoming, there's a coal mine that is 10,000 square miles of coal up to 200 feet thick. That would take a lot of trees. And sometimes in coal, human artifacts are found. This bell was found inside a lump of coal. The sole of a shoe was found inside a piece of coal. The stitching was so clear you could see the twist in the threads. This iron pot was found inside a lump of coal. Your kids are going to be told coal formed millions of years ago. No, coal formed in the flood. The Bible says there were green herbs over all the earth. Genesis 1:29. I think there were plants from pole to pole. You know, when they went down to Antarctica, they discovered frozen leaves. There are no trees in Antarctica, and yet thousands of leaves are found deposited there, 250 miles from the South Pole. Today, the Earth is 70% underwater. Only 3% of planet Earth is habitable for mankind. The rest is underwater, deserts, ice caps, or just plain cold like it is up here in Wisconsin. 3% habitable for mankind. The Bible says God formed it to be inhabited. That's why He did it. I think the pre-flood world was loaded with trees from pole to pole. We cover lots more on that on video number 6. A layer of water above the atmosphere would block out the harmful rays of the sun. See, the sun puts off a lot of stuff besides light. It puts off gamma rays and X-rays and beta rays, and all them ray boys come down here, and they're kind of hard on your carcass. X-rays, particularly, are dangerous. How many have ever had an X-ray before? I broke 9 bones growing up. You go to the hospital, and they say, take off all your clothes and put this little gown on. They give you that little tiny gown that doesn't quite come together in the back, you know, it's kind of embarrassing. And they say, now walk down the hall about 12 miles. And on the left, you'll see the X-ray room. Well, if you make it all that way, they'll say, oh, we're so glad you made it. Would you please lay on this table? And they just got the table out of the freezer a few minutes before you got there. How many been on that same table? You know which one I'm talking about. It's ice cold. And he puts this weird machine on top of you. It says, okay, now take a deep breath. Hold it. And then he runs out in the hall. He says, hey, Doc, come here. Is this machine dangerous? He says, oh, no, it's harmless. He says, how does it work, Doc? He says, well, when I mash the button, X-ray bullets come out of that machine, and they're going to blow right through your carcass like a machine gun, and we're going to blow you full of holes. They're tiny, though. You won't feel a thing. Actually, they're going to make a shadow of what's inside your body, a reverse image, which explains why so many radiologists have a negative outlook on life. We're going to blow you full of holes. And you say, well, Doc, if this is so harmless, how come you run out in the hall? Well, he knows long-term exposure to X-rays is dangerous.